Hello, and welcome to the Things I Want My Daughters to Know podcast, the podcast redefining women's health one unfiltered conversation at a time. I'm your host, Jacqueline Rose, and every week we will sit down with leading women's health experts and real women to share their lived experiences, bust health myths, challenge outdated and uninformed narratives, and explore what's really possible for women. We'll explore the truth around women's health, from periods to fertility issues, menopause, hormones, and aging, and everything in between, while sharing practical, evidence informed strategies that you can use to feel more connected to your body, empowered in your choices, and confident at every stage of your life. This podcast is for every woman who felt confused, dismissed, or left out of her own health conversation. It is a space to celebrate women, break the silence, and open up an intergenerational conversation between mothers, daughters, sisters, aunts, and friends. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Things I Want My Daughters to Know podcast. And today I am going to be fangirling a little bit because I have the fabulous Jackie Lynch who is joining us. In my mind, she is one of the OGs in the menopause space. She has had a menopause podcast for years and definitely was one of the first ones that I was listening to. So I'm really honored, Jackie, that you're here to join us. Tell us a little bit who you are, what you do, and we'll get straight into it.
Oh, hi, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Yeah, I am a nutritionist and I've been working in the women's health space for over 15 years now. And my particular area of interest for a very long time has been perimenopause and menopause. Probably been specializing in it probably for about 11 or 12 of those years. I would say it's hard looking back because the time goes so quickly. Um, because it became very clear to me very early on that there was so little information out there. I was actually quite shocked at how little the women who were coming to my clinic were really understanding about menopause, and also the really important role of diet and lifestyle in all of that,
Yeah.
and the fact that you can take control of your health and you can influence your symptoms through what you're eating and through the drinking and the nature of your lifestyle. So the sort of heart of what I do is my clinical work. But of course, that's very one-on-one, and you can only see so many people. There's only one of me.
Yes.
So that's why I've written several nutrition books, and
Yeah.
the one I burned to write was The Happy Menopause Smart Nutrition to Help You Flourish, because by that time it was my third book and I thought, I really now want to share this information.
Yeah.
And by the same token, as I was writing, that was when I launched the Happy Menopause podcast, because I thought, well, I didn't know much about podcasts myself back then because they were very new. I launched it
Yes.
in 2019. Um, but it did seem to me that that would be a great way to get lots of expert advice out there,
Yeah.
both sharing my own nutritional expertise, but also bringing in expert guests.
Yeah.
So I do that. I do talks and workshops, and pretty much everything I do all day, every day, is in some way, shape, or form spreading the word about all the things we can do to help ourselves during this period.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I love about you and that I think is really different, firstly, that you've been doing it a very long time. You've been in this space a long time. You were in this space before it was even,
A
a
space.
popular thing. Yeah. So, I really want to get your perspective as to how you see this whole menopause space has changed in the time you've been
Mm,
doing it. But one of the things that is really interesting about you is that, and which is what I love, is that you really have embraced the whole lifestyle approach, which about how we can support ourselves, yes, during perimenopause and menopause, but really not looking at a hormonal external support, but really looking at how we can be proactive, what we can do ourselves to support ourselves. And you have written books, you've got your podcast, you've got a lot of ways to share that information. But I guess my first question really is, what is it about the menopause space that you have seen change in the time you've been doing it because you really were one of the first people out there? And how do you perceive and understand this whole thing about long-term health? Obviously HRT is all the rage, but you really are not, I don't want to talk about HRT because we talk about it enough. I really want to talk about the way that you understand long-term health, the way that we understand women's health as we navigate all different things, and particularly as we get into perimenopause and menopause.
Right. Well, the space has changed exponentially, and some of that is absolutely brilliant, and some of it is pretty awful,
Yes.
actually.
Yes.
Um, so I remember, oh, it was probably about the year before lockdown. Everything is sort of before or after lockdown these days, isn't
Yes.
it? um, and that was when the first celebrities started talking about it. And I think one of the most positive things is that our generation is the first generation not to put up and shut up, be
Yes.
quietly embarrassed about it, put up with feeling dreadful, not talk about it, and have quite a lot of the time a very tough time.
Yeah.
But we weren't going to have that, and of course that meant that celebrities within our generation who had that voice were starting to talk about it, and so there were documentaries, there were books, and suddenly because they have that profile, uh, it was breaking out into the mainstream, and people were daring to say the M word and talk a little bit about it. So I really applaud that because it does mean that for people like me who'd been banging on for ages about it and plugging away in the background, it made it a little bit easier because doors were opened and suddenly people were hearing my voice and my messaging because it was more, quote, acceptable.
Yeah.
The downside to that is that an awful lot of these celebrities, um, while talking about their own experience, don't really understand because they're not health professionals
Yeah.
that what was right for them is not necessarily right for everybody. There
Yeah.
are multiple ways that you can approach the menopause, and the reality is that we're all biochemically individual.
Yeah.
So, what's quite difficult is that you can have someone become quite evangelical about whatever would work for them. And it
Yes.
might be that they did X diet, it might be that they took HRT, it might be any number of different things,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean it was right for you.
Yeah.
Hormones might be right for you and wrong for them, or the other way around.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing, and I've always felt this very strongly, is that women are able to feel informed. They get all the relevant information and then they make the decision for them. It's not that one way is wrong and one way is right,
Yeah.
it's what is right for you. And so there's a little bit, for me, and I know this may be an unpopular thing to say, but I do feel that the HRT drum is banging a bit too loudly, and
I
women are
agree.
sometimes not realizing that perhaps they personally don't need it, or
Yeah.
that they could be making other simple changes that could help them. So that's a little bit of a worry to me.
Yeah.
But I think the overarching thing is it's great, it's out there, it's proud. I remember I've been doing corporate workshops ever since I qualified as a nutritionist because my previous background was corporate. But they were all about all manner of different themes. There would be sleep or energy or digestion and whatever.
Yeah.
No one would ever ask me to talk about menopause. And now I spend loads of time going into workplaces talking about menopause, and the workplaces embraced it and they're trying to do
Yeah.
policies. And some are more successful than others because they're not always sure how to go about it. But the fact is, it's out there, and I think that that is great. The downside, though, is that it's become a bit of a gravy train.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I look on social media and everybody is calling themselves a menopause something, whether you're the
Yes.
menopause nutritionist like I am, or whether you're the menopause skincare person, the menopause personal trainer, the menopause this, the menopause that.
Yeah.
And now it's become a what's the word, an industry. So what used to just be a really good quality face cream is now a menopause face cream. And then you'll whack another £10 onto that because it's called menopause.
Yeah. The one I
Where,
love the most is menopause chocolate.
oh my God, yeah, menopause tea. I mean, there's just all sorts, all sorts. And a lot of people are now making a lot of money out of it. And I think that's a real shame because it's inevitable because now menopause is becoming more mainstream,
Yeah.
but it does mean that I think it's almost become more confusing for women.
Yeah.
So it's a very
And
sort
it
of
also
double-edged sword.
dilutes the work that is being done by really professional people who do know what they're talking about. When celebrities are coming across, and again, it has totally increased the conversation. That's good. But when celebrities come across as the experts, or when celebrities are have their own products and their own brands
Mm,
that are, menopause, geared for menopausal women, I feel it in a way it sort of dilutes the work that the really good people are doing because, oh, just another person, as you said, jumping on the menopause train.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
that definitely is problematic. And I think 100% we need to remember that the image that is being portrayed as, this is gold standard, or this is the one treatment that is going to work for everyone. We need to remember that there needs to be so much personalization when it comes to
For sure,
treatment things. But you've
for
been
sure.
talking about the lifestyle nutrition elements of it for so long. So tell us a little bit what that means, what that looks like, how that shows up for women. Yeah, and in terms of sort of symptom treatment, what are you sort of where do you place yourself in that conversation?
Well, I mean, the reason I call my entire brand, whether it's the podcast, the books, the club, whatever, the Happy Menopause, is because I feel quite strongly that there's a lot of scaremongering going on.
Yeah,
And I'm coming across women in their 30s who are saying, oh, goodness, I'm terrified. In another 10 years, I'll be going into perimenopause. And I'm really scared because it sounds awful. And
yeah,
in a way, I think, gosh, perhaps it was better when we didn't even think about it back then.
yeah,
Because, inevitably to sell books and to sell products, there's a little bit of fear that's created that
yeah,
you'll feel dreadful, you'll go mad, you'll lose your mind. And it doesn't have to be that way. And frankly, for the large majority of women, it is not that way. There's really only about 20% of women who have a really rough time. But wherever you sit on that spectrum, you are going to go through it. So it's all about thinking really clearly about how you're looking after yourself in relation to your diet and lifestyle. And one of the big factors for me is stress,
yeah,
because as we move into peri, which is usually sort of early to mid 40s, that's usually a very busy time for women. If they're professional women, they've got more responsibility at work, more pressure. It might be the clash of the hormones in the household where menopause meets puberty. It could be caring for elderly relatives, the empty nest syndrome. There are all these things and these pressures
yeah,
and stress of all kinds, wherever it's coming at you from, um, will make your menopause symptoms worse. So a self-care goes a long way.
yeah,
And self-care for me is very much about eating the right things because that's my expertise. And so thinking about getting your macronutrient balance right, really eating good quality protein to support your brain and your bones and your muscles and your skin and hair. If I haven't sold it to you, but they're really important for skin and hair. Thinking about perhaps not overdoing some of the things that may have become crutches, like
mhm,
caffeine or alcohol, used to pep you up or to calm you down and relax you, but that they're very insidious, and over time that can really start to play into your symptoms. Thinking about taking the time, in the same way as women who have children will always have made sure, oh my goodness, the kids, they're going to eat well and going to make sure they get enough sleep, fresh air, exercise, you do all that. And then you don't do that for yourself.
no,
So it's the time to treat yourself like you would treat your most precious loved one. And that's the approach I try to take in my nutrition clinic.
yeah, yeah. One of the things that I love about what you do, especially in your podcast, is you combine the wisdom of experts and specialists with amazing stories of real women in that mold of happy menopause. And I actually had to go back to write down because one of the episodes I listened to, and I thought it was just a couple of years ago, I was quite shocked to see it was in 2021, was and it was so powerful to me. I think about it regularly. It was in your season 2. I know you've just finished season 6 of your podcast.
Yeah.
You're about to launch season 7. It was season 2. The woman who had a motorhome adventure, and she basically,
Ah,
I think it was during Corona even, she basically decided to, travel around Britain in a motorhome. And it was so impactful for me because it was a woman doing her own thing, and that's exactly what menopause is meant to all be about. And there you have another episode in the last year that the title of it is sort of just again epitomizes what I think we're not talking about. The title of the episode was Travel, Adventure, and the Midlife Woman. And I think that we do need to move away from that fear mongering, and that's one of the things that you really do. And I love the fact that you're bringing these stories of real women doing really amazing things, because we do need to change that narrative. And there's an element of the women's health narrative in general is even from young girls, from young girls who have maybe irregular periods or bad PMS, or maybe they're realizing maybe they have a diagnosis of PCOS or something like that, where women's health is surrounded by pain, suffering, confusion, negativity. And now, it's creeping into, and it's not even, it's very evident in that perimenopause, menopause space. But one of the things that you really are trying to do is change that narrative. And I just want to go into that a little bit of why is it that that women's health space has been so revolved around such negative narratives, negative talk, and why and how you're really trying to change that.
Yeah, it is true. I think it's well, I talked about the fear mongering a minute ago, and it is something I get very frustrated about because ultimately, in so many ways, I think this is the best part of our life. It's actually brilliant to stop having periods and stop having to sort of have stuff in your bag just in case,
Yeah,
or think, oh no, that really big event coincides with my period and I'm going to feel grumpy and bloated or whatever it might be. Um, I think I personally love being a woman in my 50s because I think you have that level of confidence and you are much more likely you found your voice, you're much more likely to
yeah,
think, you know what, I don't actually care, I'm going to say this because this
yeah.
needs saying. um that whole sense of, in ancient times and also sort of tribal villages where you've got the wise woman of the village
Yes.
and they are revered and they're actually, run everything and what they say goes. And we've lost a lot of that, I think, in the Western world,
Yeah.
which is a great shame. And so it just becomes this sense of, pain and bleeding and misery and bad mood, mental health issues, without thinking about, well, actually there's also lots of good stuff going on. And although you can't think yourself out of certain symptoms, to be fair, you can nonetheless think about, well, what can I control? Because I think if
Yeah.
you are in control, it is very empowering. If you feel that you're out of control and everyone else is managing you and your symptoms and except you, then
Yeah.
you are going to feel disempowered. You are going to feel more stressed. So I think, Siobhan Daniels,
Yeah.
the woman who went off and is still gone, by the way, she's still
Is she
out there, her younger
really?
man. She set off, it was supposed to be a year, to mark her retirement. But about 2 months after she left, the pandemic kicked in and
Right.
there was lockdown, and she had to park in some sort of lonely
Field.
hillside at the top of a cliff, as I recall. So she thought, well, I'll do it for another year once it's all over because I want to get that experience. And she's still out there. And I know she
Wow.
earlier this year she went off to France and started doing the same thing across France. So
Wow.
that sense, and I think she, by taking the plunge, because she was, she had her doubts about it, she has built up that sense of positivity and confidence.
Yeah.
And when I hear her voice now, because she's a big voice on social media now compared to when I first spoke to her, she's such a powerful woman, and she's done that for herself by grasping life with both hands.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that the narrative, I mean, it is changing, and examples like this are prime ways that we know it's changing. But there still is some, I think, deep-rooted stereotype that as we age, we become irrelevant. But
Yeah.
it definitely is changing. But given that, and given that we understand that this time of life can be super empowering, what do we need to really explain to our younger women about women's hormones, about nutrition, about the things that they can be doing in their younger years, changes that they can be making that will then carry them on through as they age and navigate into perimenopause and menopause?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, that in our 20s, we're pretty indestructible. I sort of look back and think, I was up to all sorts, and just bounce back, and you could be up all night and fresh as a daisy at work. And the idea of being up all night now is
Yeah.
shudder with horror. Um, And so, to a degree, I think one of the things I'd say is don't worry too much. I think we can all create quite a lot of health anxiety, and in your 20s, you're probably fine, um, mainly pretty indestructible. But there is one key area I think that girls, and I say girls in their 20s, they're women, um, um, but they should be thinking about is bone health, because
Mm.
actually we reach our peak, women reach our peak bone health at the age of 29.
Wow.
And it starts to decline then. The sharper decline is around menopause with the drop in estrogen, but it starts to decline gradually from 29 unless you are doing a lot of weight bearing exercise. And what's interesting, and it's against a stat from one of the podcasts that a wonderful women's health physio told me, is that studies have shown that by the age of 5, already by the age of 5, girls are less likely to walk to school, less likely to cycle, less likely to join a sports
Mm.
club than boys. So already the sort of sense of being weaker and less physical is
Yeah.
becoming entrenched. And
Yeah.
because, lots of girls, I remember my PE days at school myself and the communal showers and the hideousness of it all.
Yeah.
They might do PE and not do anything else. And
Yeah.
usually by the time they're sort of, late teens, dropping all that, not interested, off to university or off to work or whatever it is they're
Yeah.
doing. And exercise has
Whereas
become
boys
so
are probably still
free.
playing Sunday football or something like that.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So I think, thinking just even if it's just as simple as walking and not driving, or taking up something, building your strength. I mean, with physical strength comes confidence. And a lot
Yeah.
of women in their 20s, well, a lot of women of any age really, aren't as confident as they might be. But when you're physically strong, then that they'll become this inner confidence. And
Yeah.
not, quite aside from the fact that physical exercise releases endorphins, which will really help with your mood and
Yeah.
your positivity, which we can all do with a bit of. But that physical strength, that sense of being confident in your own body, not sort of slim or fat, but just feeling strong and
Yeah.
thinking, well, I can run around the park. I can sort of jump in that hole or
Yeah.
whatever it is that you're doing. And I think that just doing physical exercise in your 20s and not just allowing yourself to become a bit of a couch potato where you're just thinking, well, I can go out and drinking all night because I'm fine tomorrow. Well, that's fine, yeah, sure you can. And believe me, when you come to 30, the switch will flick and you won't be able to do that.
Yes.
But in the meantime, at least do the walking, do the exercise, build your strength up so that your
Interesting.
bones are in the best possible shape at 29, because by the time you move into your 30s you'll probably start thinking about exercise anyway, but better to be building on a base that is as high
Yeah.
and as good as it could be for your
Yeah.
bones.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to go too much down the rabbit hole of body image and what and how women perceive thin is always better. But when we're talking about physical strength and we're talking about mental strength and
Yeah,
the nutrition nourishing our bodies, that has nothing to do with the number on the scales. It's got
absolutely
all to
not.
do with, and that's not what we're taught. It's not still today. And I even feel that we've gone a little bit backwards, even, but still today, the number on the scale is still what sets the tone.
Yeah, yeah, and there's just no sense in it, because if you, I mean, BMI, the body mass index, I mean, it makes, for example, it's a mockery when you're looking at a male rugby player, because they would be morbidly obese
Yes.
according to the BMI scale, which of
Yes.
course they're perfectly not, but their their muscle mass and their the height, it's completely out of whack with what BMI is.
Yeah.
Weight is just a number. What you need to be thinking about is your strength and your tone, and you don't want to be carrying large amounts of fat. But the truth is that most girls and then most young women are um, driven by what they see. In the old days, it used to be what we saw in magazines. Now it's what we see on social media. Um, I look back at photos of myself, in my 20s, where I thought, oh, I should think, oh, I'm a bit fat. And then I'd look and I think, oh my God, I was perfect. What was I thinking?
Yeah.
But we judge ourselves very, very harshly. And
Yeah.
I would say don't diet like mad. It's going to muck up your metabolism and make it a lot easier, harder to manage your weight later in life. But
Yeah.
also, if you are over dieting and you're becoming really petite, then that again is going to have implications for your bone health later in life.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said that you originally came from corporate. So how do you see that experience in the corporate world shaping your approach to wellness, resilience, setting boundaries? the role of in women's health, sort of how do you see your those past experiences informing and influencing you and the work you do today?
Well, I think it's been really helpful because I was at a senior level. I was the only woman on the board. I traveled a lot. I managed a large team. And so when I'm working with professional women, I know exactly the kind of pressures they're facing.
Yeah.
So that's been very helpful for me. I think that it taught me, looking back, it's taught me a lot about stress management, about the just understanding the small things that can make a difference,
Yes.
really thinking about taking time to look after yourself, having a breather, working smart, not long. Anyone can do a 14-hour day, but how many out of those hours are truly productive
Productive.
hours, actually?
Yeah.
Um, and I know that working at home is a bit of a double-edged sword, but in many ways you get more done because you're not being distracted all the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are the boundary issues at home depending on the nature of the space you've got, whether you can shut a door and walk away, or whether
Yeah.
actually you're working in your dining room or your bedroom, in which case it becomes harder.
Yeah.
But I think that women, and it's drummed into us from an early age, we have to be perfect. We have to be the good little girl, the quiet, the complacent.
Yeah.
And in the workplace, that doesn't work. Um, and what happens is that, people who are really good at their jobs get asked to do more. And then they get asked to do more and then to do more. And of course, after a while, you're not
Mm.
as good because you're doing too much. And
Yeah.
men are really good at pushing back, and we're not.
Yes.
And I think having that confidence to say, okay, well, I'd love to take on that project. What would you like me to stop doing so I can really focus on that? And that very simple sentence is something
Yeah.
that I learned. Actually, I learned it from one of my team, a male in my team who said that to me once. And I thought, that's a great thing. And I adopted it and used it
Yeah.
myself
But
with
isn't it,
other women.
as you're saying that, that is triggering me personally as thinking, well, if I said that to my, team leader, they'd think I was incapable, that I couldn't juggle as much and I couldn't cope with the pressure. And it's fascinating that that was my gut instinct of like,
Yeah,
if I said
that's
that,
what you
they
thought.
would look at me as if I wasn't able to cope.
Yeah, yeah. And the fact is that they wouldn't really, but that's what you internally are thinking.
Yeah.
That sense of, oh, I've just got to be perfect. And
Yeah.
the truth is, no matter how much you love your job, it'll never love you back. And I know that's a cliche, but it's true. And I think you've
Yeah.
really got to be sort of thinking that, don't cancel your holiday at the last minute. Don't think, oh gosh, I can't book my holiday then because X. Because if you look at the guys, they book their holiday when they want their holiday. It doesn't ever even crosses their mind that there's a
Yeah.
problem. And I
Yeah.
think that sort of my time in the corporate world taught me a lot about just learning to be more resilient and more confident about how I approach things. Because if you don't, then you just get steamrolled.
Yeah. And how are you seeing this whole space of menopause in the workplace? Because we know that, as you said, women now have worked for years to get to high levels of responsibility, to be team leaders, to be in the C-suite, to be, sitting at that,
Yeah,
table. And then all of a sudden, at the peak of their career, they often get hit with unexpected or unpredictable menopausal symptoms. And they're now battling this. I need to perform at the highest level because I spent so many years and there are all these expectations now on me,
yeah,
versus I'm sitting in a meeting and I've got brain fog and I have no idea what's going on.
yeah, yeah,
So that's also that confidence issue that arises now with women who really have worked for years to get somewhere, and then all of a sudden are like, "What's going on here? Maybe I can't cope," and then needing to ask for holiday days, or so many women are retiring now in midlife. How do you see that with your corporate experience?
yeah. I fear for women actually because I think, goodness, you spend sort of half your life hiding the fact that you might want to get pregnant or you are pregnant so you don't miss out on the promotion. And
Yes.
then once you get past that, now it's this whole business of, oh my God, it's menopause and apparently I'm going to go mad and lose my mind. And there is a bit of a worry about the fact that these scaremongering headlines that I've touched on before, because of course a
Yes.
lot of managers will be thinking, oh God, there's another reason not to hire a woman. Um, you know,
It's a
uh,
bit of, it's I've also been thinking it's going to backfire when you now say that menopause is now recognized as a disability and therefore is protected.
mm,
There is a sort
yeah.
of
No,
alternative way of possibly viewing that.
I think there is, and I don't see it as a disability. Yeah, adolescence, puberty is not a disability. This is a transitional phase of
Yeah,
life. And so I think that the big thing really is, again, for you to take responsibility, because it's great. Of course, a lot of workplaces are now getting menopause policies. What does that actually mean? Well, it will depend on the organization. It might just mean they've got, a paragraph in the staff handbook, and it
yeah,
might mean that they literally do think about things like flooding and have free sanitary wear available if you get caught
yeah,
out, or that they've got quiet spaces, or they've added fans to their stationery list so people can get them without having to ask specially. And all those sorts of things are great. But I think ultimately you need to think much more about your self-care. You need to think about, what can I do to manage my stress? How can I manage my diary more carefully? How can I make sure I've got space to breathe between meetings?
yeah,
And instead of putting everyone else first, because at this point, if you have got kids, they will be a bit older. They're not toddlers, be very unlikely if they're toddlers.
yeah,
um, and therefore you can take that hour to go and have a massage, or to go for a walk on your own, not thinking, oh, let's all go for a walk, and then you're still mum, but
yeah,
actually just, having that breather, locking the bathroom door so they can't barge in, and you
yeah,
actually having a Epsom salts bath and a few candles and just some downtime. Those small things that you can do that just dial the stress down a bit, so that when you're in that board meeting and you are thinking, oh God, the brain fog's coming, the stress isn't clouding that, and you can just pause, take a moment. Having a notebook's a great thing. My memory, has always been really brilliant, but now it's a bit like, from time to time, I just think, I know there was something there. What was that thing? So, I have a little notebook, and
yeah,
it's fine, because in meetings you take notes. So that's normal. People have notebooks. You can just think, oh, that was the question I wanted to ask. That was the point I wanted to raise. And then you can raise it. So give yourself a bit of a leg up. Don't just think, well, I can't do it anymore. Of course you
yeah.
can. You just need to do it a bit differently, and think about how you can protect yourself. And if you can't do tea and coffee, and that's all that's in the meeting room, then bring your own tea bags in. That's what I did. I would, because I went herbal in about 2005, I think, and I was still in my corporate job then, and that was all very peculiar. But I just took my own cup of tea in with my tea bag.
Yeah.
I had my own cold water bottle. I just had these things that meant that I was comfortable in my context, and I wasn't going to be thinking, well, it's not available. If it's not available, make it available for yourself,
Yeah.
um, because ultimately, if you're trying to perform at the highest level, and you don't want to be going to your boss and saying, I can't, saying what you think comes across as, I can't cope,
Yeah.
um, then you've got to find ways in the background which will mean that you are managing. And a lot of people, remember, most people are not very observant. So they're probably not going to notice that you're struggling, because people are far too obsessed with what they're doing
With
to
what they're
think about
doing.
the fact
Yeah.
that you might be looking a bit red, or feeling a bit like, what was that? Who was that? What was your name again? People
Yeah.
just don't notice that stuff. You'll
Yeah.
notice it, but just remember that they probably won't.
Yeah. Yeah, so such important things to share, and really practical small things that you can do that can really make a difference. And as you said, just reduce that level of stress that, oh my gosh, what am I going to do if and when you prepare, you set yourself up, you have small little things that you're doing, I think really, really helpful. And you don't need to make a big deal of it. It doesn't need to be this very big, stressful, or this big thing. It can also just be, small things that just become normal for you. And that, okay, fine. So, you're taking in your bottle of water to a meeting.
Yeah,
It's not a
yeah,
big deal. It doesn't
yeah.
have to be a big deal.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, I was lucky because I had a PA, and sort of, if it was like one of those long meetings that was going on for 3 hours, every hour she'd come in with a cup of herbal tea for me, because the flasks were all tea and coffee, and
Yeah.
everyone was just like, oh, that's Jackie's herbal tea. There was no sort of, oh, she's going through menopause. It was just, that's Jackie's herbal tea. So
Yeah.
there are
Yeah.
little ways you can do that.
Yeah. So, in all the work you do, the one-on-one client work you do, the stories you've heard, I know it may be a little bit pejorative to whittle it down to sort of some basic small things, but is there like a sort of short list of things that small changes that really women should be doing so that we can navigate and prepare ourselves? Because we know that menopause is not the main event, post-menopause is the main event, but to really set ourselves up for this time and for post-menopause. Sort of, I don't want to call it a checklist or anything. I don't want to sort of limit it to that, but are there things that really we should be all doing to support
Yeah.
ourselves, improve our health and wellness, and really set ourselves up for a great post-menopause?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I'd say, and I've just picked things that would work for everybody, um, and that everybody should be doing. And the first thing, and probably the single most important thing, and the thing that I see it in my clinic day after day, they'll come back for the second session and say, "Oh my God, I feel completely different. I feel so much better,"
Yeah.
and it's protein. We are
Yes.
not eating enough protein.
Yeah.
So, what is protein? It's meat, fish, eggs, certain forms of dairy like cottage cheese or authentic strain Greek yogurt are good sources of protein. Soya, so tofu, edamame, lentils, chickpeas, beans, nuts and seeds, all good sources of protein. We don't eat enough protein. We
Yeah.
need to be eating protein with every meal and every snack. And men are great at this. Yeah, they've got that down. I think it's because they know somehow it's linked to muscles and they all want to be
Why do you
strong.
think there is this? Because there definitely is, much easier to grab your bowl of pasta than to have, a tuna salad. What is it? Can you identify? Because we know this that we need to be having more protein, but obviously aren't eating enough protein. Is there something that's happened as to why women specifically have not traditionally eaten so much protein?
I think it's probably just that sense of we're always on some kind of careful, let's call it a regime. Men
Mm,
will look at a meal, and if it doesn't have an obvious source of protein in it, they'll take a very dim view. We'll think, oh, yes, yes, that's my leafy green salad. Excellent. When I'm on a diet. And then, of course, 2 hours later, absolutely starving and heading
Starving.
for the biscuit tin. I think it's no surprise that most men, it's a bit of a generalization, but most men don't have a terribly sweet tooth. More of the
Mm,
men I know don't have sweet teeth. It's quite
yeah,
unusual, I think, to have a man who's got a really sweet tooth in the same way as some women have almost
yeah,
uncontrollably sweet tooth. Um, I think it's because they eat so much protein because it neutralizes the sugar cravings in the body. It regulates blood sugar. So,
fascinating.
they'll have really good quality big meals, and then they tend not like us, always grazing and nibbling. Oh, there's a biscuit, there's a bit of chocolate. So I think it sort of comes down to that. We might have if we even have breakfast, it's probably like a little slice of toast with some honey on it. No
Yeah,
protein. If it's lunch, it's going to be the inevitable salad, probably no protein.
yeah,
And then finally a bit of chicken in the evening. And it's just not enough. So
yeah,
every meal should have, if it's nuts and seeds at breakfast time, then it's a couple of tablespoons. If it's lunch or dinner, we're talking about a fist size portion, so the sort of equivalent of a chicken breast in terms of size or big, portion of tofu or whatever it might be. Um, honestly, it activates the neurotransmitters so that if you're struggling with brain fog or low mood, then that's going to help. It gives the strength to your bones, the muscles. It regulates the blood sugar. It's going to help with weight management. Your skin, your hair, and nails will love getting protein. So it ticks so many boxes. And when
yeah.
women start having protein every day with every meal, within a matter of days, they feel stronger.
Wow.
So that's the first one.
And probably their cravings have been cut dramatically.
Absolutely. So instead of me saying, well, can you just stop having chocolate? And they're thinking, no, I
Yes,
can't.
yes.
I say, just eat more protein and let's see what happens. And a lot of the time it's like,
Excellent.
do you know what? I didn't need it. I motored through. Well, of course you motored through because you were actually nourishing yourself correctly.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
protein's the big one. That's the
Okay.
big one. And it's simple because protein is very easy to be had. It's
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
No, it's not
Yeah.
a difficult food and it's not an expensive food. Other simple things, mostly we don't hydrate ourselves enough.
Yeah.
And so many of the symptoms of dehydration could be menopause symptoms, that sort of sense of loss of energy. 2% dehydration leads to about 15% drop in energy. That's a
Wow.
lot, 15%.
Yeah.
Um, and in fact, I'm feeling dehydrated now, so I'm probably dropping it. So
Yes. Yeah. I've got my water bottle
quick
here.
swig
Oh,
of water there, my
my
large
water
pint
bottle there.
glass. Um, And it can affect, well, you see, if you watch movies of people who are dehydrated in the desert, and the first thing they get, delusions, don't they? Start seeing things,
Yeah,
their brain shuts down. It's the first thing to go, because the brain actually isn't required to keep you alive,
yeah.
and the body will, body's job is to keep you alive. So if you're
And
struggling
I
with
know
eating.
that so many women who are busy, who are running around, will say, "Well, I had my coffee in the morning and I'll have another one at lunchtime, and yeah, I'm drinking."
Yeah, it's not enough. So we need to be thinking about, hydrating ourselves much more effectively. That's going to deal with other things as well, because if you're prone to issues like UTIs, urinary tract infections, that's often because you're not drinking enough water.
Yeah.
So it can help in a number of ways. Really important for your skin, because so much of your skin is made of water. So if you're thinking your skin's not looking great, well, you could spend a lot of money on a facial cream, or you could drink more water. So,
Well, why would you do that if you could spend a lot of money on facial cream?
yeah,
Because
and
the
it's called
adverts told you how
menopause.
great it was.
I think also, if you think about the 5 a day, I'd say make it 5 veg. Any fruit is a bonus.
Yeah,
Um, so it might be 2 veg, at lunchtime as part of a salad, or perhaps it's some hummus and carrots as part of a snack, and then 3 vegetables perhaps with your evening meal. Lots of ways to do that, because that way you're getting all the micronutrients. You're getting the magnesium, which is so important for the nervous system, but
yeah,
also for muscle twitches and spasms and fatigue. Really important for digestive health as well, brain health. So it's a big one, magnesium. And then with all the vegetables, you'll get the vitamin C, you'll get the zinc, you'll get the calcium, you'll get the iron, all these
yeah,
things that we need to keep really functioning well, but without having to think about it, without counting calories, and without thinking, oh, what did she say had zinc in it? Was it the pumpkin seeds or was it the almonds? I can't remember. Doesn't matter. Just have 5 vegetables a day, and you're just going to be getting that stuff. So
yeah,
5 vegetables a day and protein, brilliant. And if you've, I'm not saying don't have starch. If you want your rice or your pasta or your potatoes, your bread, great, yeah, do that. But 5 veg and the protein, those are sort of, lay that down.
yeah.
They're the things that the body's really going to love, and it can make a difference.
Amazing, amazing. And I think your approach is so true that we're not looking to remove things from our diet. We're not saying, no sugar, no carbs, no this, no that. It's more, and I totally agree with this approach, increase the good stuff. And you're going to naturally find that you don't crave that, triggering
Yeah,
food or inflammatory food or, you know, bad food. I don't know that word, bad food, but the food that
yeah,
may
I know
not
what
be
you
so
mean.
great for you,
Yeah,
you're going to naturally not crave it because you're filling yourself up with all this other really, really good stuff.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So
Amazing.
it just does the job for you, and you don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
What could be better?
Yeah. Wow, this has been really quite amazing. Is there anything else you want to share with us before we come to our close and I ask my question that I ask at the end of every podcast to every guest? So, is there anything else that you think we really need to be aware about that, women at this stage of life, with given all the menopause noise that is really out there, what do we really need to sort of whittle down to some essence, some basic principles that we really need to focus on, rather than that there really is so much noise and so much information going on out there at the moment.
Okay, I'll just say 3 quick things. Firstly, don't self-diagnose just because there's all this stuff out there. Don't
Yeah,
self-diagnose. Go and see your doctor, because it might be menopause, but guess what? Pretty much all the symptoms of an underactive thyroid are the same as menopause.
yeah,
How do you know that it's menopause?
yes,
So go and get some proper advice first of all.
yeah,
Inform yourself. And don't feel that you've got to go down one route or another. Don't beat yourself up if you thought, I want to go the natural route, and you end up having to have HRT. That is right for you.
yeah,
Equally, don't feel, oh God, everyone says I'm going to go mad if I don't have HRT, and you're feeling well. If you're feeling well, then you don't need it. So you
yeah,
must do what is right for you and get that information. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is really focus hard on self-care. This is your time.
mm,
And I know our instinct as women is to look after everyone else except ourselves. And if we don't have, children, then we'll be the elderly relative, or it'll be the job, it'll be something else we're looking after.
yeah,
Uh, but this has got to be about you, and really, really think hard about, stopping and looking hard at what you're doing. Are you taking that daily walk? Are you exercising regularly? Are you getting fresh air? Are you doing all the things you'd expect your most cherished person to do to keep well? Because
Yeah,
most of it isn't rocket science, but are you doing it for yourself? And then finally, just be aware of your diet because it's just sitting there. It's something you do every day.
yeah,
So it's not, oh, I've got to go and do this weird new thing. Um,
yeah,
you eat every day. So it's just there waiting for you. And all it's asking for you to do is to just tweak it a little bit
yeah,
and make it way more menopause friendly. And there are lots of simple ways you can do that. I've given a few ideas already, but just inform yourself because
yeah,
there's lots of things you can do. And these small building blocks will make a huge difference. So you don't have to be all radical and weird about it. You can just sort of eat more protein, drink a bit less coffee, drink a bit less alcohol, have a daily walk, think about actively what are you going to do to relax. That's the single question that causes the most embarrassed silence in my clinic. What do you do to relax? And there's this awkward pause, and they think, I don't know. And then they panic because they realize that that's really bad.
yeah, yeah. And they're embarrassed. They're
Yeah,
embarrassed,
yeah,
like, that should I be relaxing? Shouldn't like
yeah,
being
yeah,
busy is a sign of success or a
yeah.
badge of honor or something or
So yeah, don't be
wow.
frightened. Put your feet up. This is your
Yeah.
time. Take care of yourself. So those are my three things, really.
Yeah, they're amazing. And I think you make it sound so easy. And I think that's what it should be. It doesn't need to be complicated. And I do think that one of the things that has happened through the real growth of the menopause conversation is it's become a little bit complicated. You
Yeah,
have to do certain things. There's, the checklist and the all the different things that you have to do. And you make it so easy and so you know, really easy to implement, really easy to understand. And I think that also takes away a lot of the shame from it all. So I really appreciate that. So as we end up our conversation, the thing that I always ask my guests at the end is this podcast is called The Things I Want My Daughters to Know, but what do you want your daughters to know? Goddaughters, nieces, that next generation of women, what is the thing that you really want to impart to them?
okay, so two things. One is life is a big adventure and just, treat it that way. It's a long time. So don't worry if you sort of think, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing or I'm in the right job or in the right relationship. Don't worry. There's lots of time to change things. You can do lots of different things. You can try different things on for size, different jobs, different countries, different friends, different lovers. Don't be scared to change and
Yeah,
don't look back with regret and think, oh, that was bad. No, no. Perhaps it doesn't suit you now, but it probably suited you then. There are lots of different ways to live your life, and
yeah,
make the most of it because you're stronger than you think and you can have a really great time if you just get out there and play the game of life. So that's the first thing.
amazing.
And then I suppose because I'm a nutritionist, I've just got to do this really. So I'm going to say, become a foodie. Eat really good food,
Mm,
enjoy good food. It's wonderful. And if you eat well, so I'm thinking ditching all the processed food, the junk foods, the ready meals, the additives, whole foods, fresh meat, fresh vegetables, flavors, herbs, spices, discover new recipes, new cuisines. Because
yeah,
it's not just the most joyful thing, but your brain and body will really thrive. And you will. It's literally the kindest and most pleasurable thing that you can do for yourself. So if
amazing.
you become a foodie, all the things I've sort of been talking about, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you'll be doing it by default and
Yeah.
you'll be really enjoying it and getting the most out of it. So make it a bit of fun.
Wow, I love that. I think that's a great piece of advice to become a foodie because yeah, people don't in they do go to the supermarket, they buy all the ready stuff and it feels like hard work, but when you make it fun and you make it an adventure and now today you can look up a recipe and there are, so many
Yeah, it's
ways
so
to
easy.
find fresh, exciting recipes that you can then, do it with friends, do it within the family, make it into a fun evening activity. That's a great piece of advice. I love that. So, Jackie, Thank you for this. This has been so amazing, so enlightening. You've really shared so much of your wisdom and knowledge and your experience over the years. Where can people find you? I know that you have a lot going on, books and your podcast and your website and everything. Where can people find you if they want to follow you? I advise, firstly, my own personal recommendation is that everyone should be listening to your podcast, but where can people find you?
Well, my website is well-well-well.co.uk. You can find everything there. My socials are at well-well-well-uk. I've got my new book, The Happy Menopause Guide to Energy, that comes out in September.
Yeah.
That's very exciting. That's available in all the usual places. But if you just go to my website, you'll find everything.
Yeah. And your podcast is The Happy Menopause. And I
Oh,
love
yeah.
that you really use that happy menopause phrase for everything that you're doing, your books and everything, because it really is the essence of what it should be. So thank you for your work. Thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for joining me at this podcast. Anyone who wants to reach out to Jackie to find out more about what she does, please go follow her. I highly recommend it. If you have questions or comments, you can reach out to her, or reach out to me. And thank you so much for joining me on this episode. And I look forward to seeing you on another episode of the Things I Want My Daughters to Know podcast.